Today we're going to discuss how do things move in and out of a cell. So we've discussed the anatomy of the cells. We know about the organelles, we know about the cell membrane. Now we're going to talk about how do we move things through the cell membrane, either to the inside or to the outside of the cell environment. So we've got just a little bit of terminology to go over. You have intracellular. Well, we all know the medical term intra means
inside.
Inside, yes, very good. Inside. So intracellular is everything that is found on the inside of a cell. Extracellular, obviously, is everything found on the outside of a cell. Now, what interstitial means is fluid in tissue. Now, this is not blood. You are not bleeding into your tissue. Think about if you took a long car ride or you took a long flight, and when you got off the plane or you got out of the car, what happened to your feet? They swole up. Fluid leaked out of our blood and into the interstitial spaces, or spaces within the tissue. That's what interstitial means. For those of you that have been pregnant, you know you get swollen feet. That is interstitial fluid causing that tissue to swell. So these are the three types of body fluids that we can have: stuff inside the cell, stuff outside the cell, and then stuff that goes further into the tissue. Here we have just a little bit of terminology. Move my chat down here. A little bit of terminology. We have cations, which we know are what charge?
Positive.
They are positive. And we have anions, which are negative. Now, if we have one of these ions, and remember, an ion is simply a molecule or an atom that has gained or lost an electron. So if I gain an electron, if we think of electrons like bad feelings, if I gain an electron, I gain bad feelings, I become negative. If I lose an electron, I lose bad feelings, and I become more positive. And if I have changed my charge like this, I have become an electrolyte, or something that has an electrical charge. This is just stuff from the last couple of chapters. All right, so what exactly can pass through our cell membrane? Well, really, we have a lot of stuff that needs to pass back and forth. You have things like fatty acids and amino acids that either need to get into the cell to provide building blocks for other things, or to provide nutrients for the cell itself. You have gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide that are going to have to be moving back and forth through the cell membrane. And we need the cell membrane to maintain what we call homeostasis, meaning that the pressure on the inside of the cell is equal to the pressure on the outside. So let me get my pen going here. So here's my, oops. No, I want my pen. Here we go. Here's my cell. And if the pressure is higher on the outside than the inside, so I have the pressure being exerted here on the cell, if the pressure gets too great, but on the other hand, if the pressure on the, here's another cell, if the pressure on the outside is greater than the pressure on the inside, and I now have the force being exerted like this, here's my cell. So either I'm exerting too much pressure on the inside causing it to explode, or I have too much pressure on the inside causing it to implode. And so that's why it's really important that I have the same pressure on both the inside and the outside of my cell. Homeostasis. The way that I can move stuff back and forth through our cells could be passive. Passive means that there is no energy needed. I do not require energy to do it. Or I could have active, where I do require energy. And remember, energy that my cells are using is energy in the form of something called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. I have 3 phosphorus molecules. Pew! I unbond one, I break the bond, it releases energy. Then I reform the bond, I break the bond. I reform the bond, I break the bond. And every time I break that bond, I'm releasing a little bit of energy. That would be active, where I need that energy to move stuff back and forth through. So here's a great example of the cell membrane. I'll explain what's going on here in just a second. So my cell membrane can be what we call impermeable, meaning that we have some substances that cannot pass through our membrane no matter what. No matter what. We can have some things be semi or selectively permeable, meaning that it only allows certain things back and forth through. Or it could be freely permeable, meaning everybody's allowed to come in, it doesn't really matter. So what I have here, this is a children's game that I have a picture of. Does anyone happen to know what this children's game is called?
Red Rover.
Rover.
Ah!
Red Rover.
Very dangerous.
I see some people who have been injured by this game. Yeah, this game gets very competitive. For those of you who do not know Red Rover, you have your cell membrane. That's what these children are representing. And the goal is to lock arms, and you say, Red Rover, let Maggie come over. And Maggie revs herself up and goes full, complete, balls out run, and tries to break through our hands that we are holding. And then the idea is, if she breaks through, she gets to pick one of these people to join this cell membrane. If she does not go through, she has to join this cell membrane. And so this is a really kind of fun, but pretty plausible example of what is happening with our cell membrane. So this guy is a molecule who is going to try and bust through this cell membrane. This is our cell membrane right here. Now he's going to be freely permeable, meaning that he is aiming this, I don't know what this kid's doing right here. He's not ready. He's standing on one foot. He's not paying attention at all. He's not ready. This little girl, on the other hand, she's taking this very, very seriously. She's got herself muscled up. This guy's going to go right here, and he's going to pass very easily through. That would be an example of freely permeable. There was no resistance at all to this molecule entering the cell membrane. If he gets stopped, that would be an example of impermeable. And if it takes him some effort, but he does eventually get through, that could be selectively, because some of these children are going to break through, some are not. So that would be selectively permeable. Does that analogy make sense to everybody? Did I lose anyone on the bus? Unmute yourself if you are lost. Oh, you guys are amazing. All right, let's first talk about passive transport, meaning that there's no energy required for this at all. We have 4 different ways that we can transport stuff through a cell membrane. Diffusion, facilitated diffusion, osmosis, and filtration. So we're going to talk about the processes, all 4 of these processes, and kind of discuss a little bit about what's going on with each. So the first one is called diffusion. And I'm willing to bet some of you may have an example of this in your own home right now. Let me grab mine over here. I've unplugged it from the last class. Bam. This particular one is from like Bath and Body Works. And the way this works is you have this little, I gotta change mine out. You got this little bulb that's filled with very, very concentrated smell. And you plug it into the wall, and then it comes out. And then if you are standing right near this, right next close to it, super, super concentrated. And then as the molecules move further away and fill up the room, suddenly your room smells lovely and you have lovely smell in your room. But the further away you get from this device, the less concentrated the smell is. Does anyone happen to know what one of these is called?
I don't know, but I have them up in my house.
This is a diffuser.
Diffuser.
It's a diffuser. It's called a diffuser. And that's using diffusion to fill up your room with smell. Now, we have something called a concentration gradient. I know I'm using some scientific terms, don't panic. What the concentration gradient is you have the area of the highest concentration when it's immediately, oh Lord, if any of you have something similar to this, like either this one or every company, smelly company sells something like this. And when you are refilling it, you get a little bit of oil on you. Oh my Lord, you're gonna smell like that for the rest of the day. Super concentrated. But then as it moves through the house, it gets less and less concentrated. That is a great example of your gradient. The concentration gradient is simply the difference between the highest and the lowest concentration. And our molecules are going to move from high to low concentration. Let me give you another analogy of using this gradient. So back pre-COVID, when we were actually able to do, public things like go to the football game or go to a concert. At the end of the concert, I think we all probably experienced something like this. At the end of the concert, you have 30,000 people who are all trying to leave at the exact same time. And so the inside of the stadium has a very, very high concentration of people. And they're all moving to the parking lot, which has a very low concentration of people. And the difference between these two, the higher the concentration, the faster these molecules are going to want to move. I don't know about you, but when I'm finished going to a Texans game and we're all pumped up because they were victorious and they did fabulous, and we've got however many people sold out game all trying to move out of the stadium, and it's sweating hot, and people just smell like BO, and they're drunk, and they're screaming, and oh my God. I want nothing more than to get out of that area as quickly as I possibly can. But right now, you go to the game, it's at 20% capacity. The difference between the concentration of people inside the stadium and outside the stadium is much less, right? We have a much lower concentration inside. So instead of like really hoofing it and trying to get out as quickly as I can, now maybe I take my time, I go grab a last minute pretzel, go check out the merch. I'm not in quite so much of a hurry. And so this is all affecting the speed with which these molecules are moving. one of the big things is, what is the difference in this gradient? Is everybody understanding the concept of the concentration gradient? Is anyone having trouble with that? Do I need to go back and re-explain that at all?
Wait, so when does it move faster? When it's like,
So when you have a much higher concentration, so if we have a greater difference between the high and the low, my molecules are going to move much faster because I'm trying desperately to get away from the high concentration into the low concentration. If my difference is not very much at all, then the molecules are going to move much slower. I have a picture, I think, Jacqueline, that's going to help you coming up in the very next slide. So give me just a second, and I think I have a picture that's going to help you with this gradient idea. Some of the determining factors that we have for the ability to move, how big is the molecule? Obviously, the smaller molecules are going to have an easier time passing through the membrane. Are the molecules fat? Oh, that's fine, Jaden, thank you. Are they fat soluble? We know that the lipid bilayer of our cell is the lipid bilayer. It is fat. Fat moves through fat, water not so much. So because fat moves through fat very easily, I don't need energy to do that. The charge of the molecules is going to determine how quickly, and then the temperature. Add heat to anything and it's going to cause stuff to speed up. The hotter it is inside the stadium, the faster I want to get my little butt out of there. So diffusion, we're using gradient, meaning the difference between high and low concentration. And we have 4 factors that can determine how easily these molecules move through. The size of the molecule, if they're made of fat, what kind of charge do they have, and what sort of temperature have I applied.
So if it was hot, no, if it was cold, then they would move slower.
Yep.
Gotcha.
100%. And if it is hot, they're going to move faster. So here's a great example of, let's see if I got my pen, the gradient. So here I have a slide. Here is my high and my low. And you can see that the bigger the difference between the two, the steeper the slide, the faster I move. Here I've got the worst slide ever on the playground. Here I have high and low. And there's not a whole lot of difference between these two. So you can see that it's not going to move very fast at all. So the greater the difference between the two, the steeper the slide, the faster my molecule moves. That is our concentration gradient. The difference between the high and the low. The greater the difference, the faster we're going to move. Just think of the slide. The lower the difference, now I'm like having to push myself. I'm not moving very well at all. Does that make sense now, Jacqueline?
yeah, I get it.
Okay, fabulous. Here's a couple of other pictures. So if we look at this, this would be the little red molecules is the smelly coming out of my wallflower. As it's coming out, we are very, very concentrated. And then as it spreads throughout the room and now is equally dispersed throughout the room, we've gone from high to low concentration, diffusion. Another great example is this, when you do a toot. So when you do a toot right around you, or when your dog farts on you, and holy smokes, right in the area of the fart is OMG. But then it does what? It diffuses throughout the room so that everybody can enjoy this smell. That's another example of fart molecules moving from my butt which is the high concentration, to the room, which is the low concentration. The second type of passive a movement is what we call facilitated diffusion. Now we're still using diffusion. We're still using the concentration gradient. We're still going from high to low, but now we have something else to help it. That's what facilitated means, to help. I am facilitating you learning this material. I am helping you to learn this material. So in this case, I have here's my cell membrane. I have high to low concentration, that's my gradient. But here, look at the size. This molecule might just be way too big. And so if I tried to shove it through this membrane, it might actually rupture the membrane and damage the cell. So here, I'm still moving from high to low, but now I have a little elevator, or I have a little trap door that's going to help me do that safely. So this is helper facilitating diffusion, which is movement from high to low. Any comments, questions, concerns about any of that?
So the bigger the opening is, the easier it is to get out.
Yeah, so it's not even an opening. What this is a little protein that acts very similar to like a rotating door. So if you go to the mall, or pre-COVID, when you went to the mall and you went through that rotating door, or really any door, so you yourself, you are too big to pass through the glass wall to get into the store. So you have to have an opening that you can open and close in order to move you from one side of the wall to the other. That's very similar to this facilitated diffusion. The big thing to remember, though, is whenever we use the word diffusion, we are specifically referring going from high to low concentration. Here's another picture. So this old man has gone from high, up high on the steps, to low. So he has moved on the diffusion, but he has got someone helping him. So this would be an example of the facilitated diffusion. Diffusion, because we're still moving from high to low. Facilitated, meaning I've got a helper. Any comments, questions, concerns about diffusion or facilitated diffusion? You guys are kind of my quiet group. I never know if you're actually getting it or if you're just waiting until the class to end.
The analogies help a lot in understanding it.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. I spent a lot of time thinking of appropriate analogies for this. All right. Diffusion and facilitated diffusion are moving molecules, solid particles. Now we talk about osmosis. And osmosis is different because we are moving water. We are not moving solid particles. We are moving water. Now, the thing is about your body is your body, everything about your body is set up to be what I like to call even Steven. Even Steven means it wants every pressure to be the same. I don't want there to be a higher pressure somewhere than somewhere else. I want it all to be even Stevenness. I don't want there to be a concentrated area of something and a not concentrated area. I want to dilute it out and make everything exactly the same. That's kind of the whole premise behind every function of your body, is to maintain sameness. Osmosis Jones, Brianna, I've never seen it, but yes, usually when I go into osmosis, that's the first thing everybody says is Osmosis Jones. All right, so osmosis is the movement of water. So what I have is, if I have a beaker with a high concentration, and I have the same amount of liquid, here's my liquid, of low concentration. Now, we're talking about water, not molecules, right? This is not diffusion. If I have super concentrated and super not concentrated, but I want these two things to be the same, how is my water going to move to make these two things the same concentration? I'm going to move it this direction. Let me give you another example. I have a glass of water, and I have added half a cup of salt to this glass. And here I have a glass of water that has no salt. This one is concentrated with salt. This one is not concentrated. If I were able to move one to the other to make them both the same, I can move. Now remember, I'm not moving molecules. I can't move the salt. The salt have to stay in this cup. The salt is magically adhered to this cup and this cup alone. And this one has water that can move. How do I make these two the same concentration?
You pour the water into the salt.
I'm going to pour the water into the salt. So in osmosis, I'm no longer thinking about gradient, okay? That's molecules. That's done. We're finished with moving molecules. Now we're moving fluid. Now I am moving from the one that has no salt, just water, to the one that, oops, stop, go away, that does have salt. And I'm going to pour the water into the salt, and I'm going to make them both now the same concentration. So you can see here, I have a higher concentration. And as I move my water over, now, yes, the volume does also increase. The volume here will decrease, but now the concentration is the same between the two. Does that make sense with the water and the salt? That in order for me to
So
get them... Go ahead, Cass.
So it's so it's just about the concentration. It doesn't matter about like the level of the water or whatever the liquid is.
Doesn't matter the level. It doesn't matter anything other than the fact that we want these to be even, Stephen. How do I do that without moving a molecule? Because osmosis equals no molecule movement. Fluid movement only. Diffusion means molecule movement only. So because we're not allowed to move the molecules, we can only move the fluid. We're going to take the lower concentrated, add it to the higher. The volume doesn't matter. My God, I could have something the size of an ocean if I wanted to. Don't matter at all. I am just adding until I have moved fluid and regulated the concentration. Let me give you another example. Let me give you a real life scenario where this is going to apply. All right, let me erase. Oops, come here. All right. For those of you that have gone to a pub, I am not talking club, rave, what have you. I'm talking about a good old-fashioned belly up to the old wooden bar, talk to the barkeep, hey, I'll have something on tap. Does anyone happen to know, or even if you've ever seen a movie, what do they have in bowls on the bar?
Nuts.
They have peanuts, and peanuts are what?
salty, so it makes you want to drink more.
Salty. So here's what's happening. You are over concentrated. You are now becoming the experiment. You are becoming concentrated with sodium. And we now have to try and dilute that out, which means that we're adding fluid from the lower your glass. There's no peanut salt in your glass. We're adding it to the saltiness of your body to try and dilute out the salt and make you even Steven. That's another example of osmosis. It's also how they make you drink more. In fact, osmosis is also the way that your kidneys work. We won't get into that because that's for another day. But you have an area of your kidneys that is super salty, and it promotes water coming out into the kidney tissue so that it can be recycled in your body. So osmosis is the movement of fluid from a low to a high concentration because we're trying to dilute it out. Now here I have a few, this is just terminology. Oops, my pen just refuses to work today. Pen. Here I have a cell. And here, this is where all of this diffusion and osmosis, this is where this is applying to. My pressure on the outside of the cell is equal to the pressure on the inside. This is known as ISO. ISO is the medical term for the same. So if the pressure is the same on the outside and the inside, what is going to be happening as far as movement?
No movement.
There's no movement. I don't have any need to move. I don't need molecules to move because there's no gradient. I don't need fluid to move because there's no higher concentration. Everything is even Stevenness. This is our ultimate goal right here. Hypo refers to what?
Less.
Water or
Low. So whenever we are looking at this, we're talking specifically about the outside of the cell. So with hypotonic, the outside of the cell has got low, the inside of the cell has got high. Osmosis, the movement of fluid, how am I moving fluid? Okay, first, before I do this, I need to tell you guys a secret. It may actually not be a secret. You may already know this, but I am going to tell you anyway, because it's going to make my lectures, I think, a little bit more interesting and fun. Did you guys know that you can draw on these PowerPoints?
We can't, but you can.
Yeah, we can.
Guess, hey, Katie, guess who did the settings to see that you can?
You did?
Give it a, look, we got it. I have my Zoom set so that you guys can draw. There's also little stamps. Somebody find the stamps. There's little stars and little, there's hearts. We found the hearts. Heart, heart, heart. Stars.
Out here.
Stars, stars, stars. I don't know. Somebody, is someone drawing a butt?
Katie, you have to click on the view options up top and click annotate.
Look at this. Oh, look, Jocelyn found the arrows. Jocelyn found the arrow.
Ha!
Did you get it, Katie?
Yeah, I wrote high in the left corner.
Oh my goodness, you guys have gone crazy. Oh, someone found the question marks.
How do I go off?
So, oh, somebody's an artiste. Look at the kitty and the puppy down there. Oh my goodness gracious, you guys. Oh, look, somebody's found, oh my God, you guys have gone crazy. You guys have found way more options than the other group. That's fantastic. So, here's what I'm going to do going forward, because I did not know this was an option. I didn't realize I could give you the option to draw on my PowerPoints. And I am going to leave this option open for you at all times. So if I am in class and you happen to be Zooming and you have a question and I happen to not have my chat turned on, you can now annotate on the slide and outline something or put a little question mark, or like Jocelyn's done right here, done a little arrow with her name. And that way I can stop and address your questions. And I think this will make it much more interactive for you guys on Zoom. So I'm going to leave this. We just have to be appropriate. Okay. Because remember, I'm recording this, and this is everything you've drawn on here is also being recorded. So yeah, don't worry. I'm going to have everyone erase what they've done on here so that we can see the last sentence. Somebody's like, what is the last sentence? I can't even see the slide anymore. What is happening right now? So if you guys are cool with that, I'm going to leave this option open for you. And that way I can start asking more questions and you guys can be much more interactive. You guys can start, like, for example, I'm going to have everybody erase what they've done on this slide. So everybody erase, because this is the other secret that I probably should not tell you, is I have no ability to erase it. Only you can erase what you've put on here. So everybody can go in and do erase. You can erase everything that you've put on this slide.
Are you sure? Because Miss Rivera on Friday, we did it for the skeleton and like writing in what each thing was. And if we weren't right about something, she could like erase or add or.
No.
Maybe that's just for if we type things in.
It could be. I don't know. I might have the settings not right. I don't know. But
not that you should have to erase things that we put.
No, of course not. No, of course not. But no, I can't erase. So if you guys, whoever else, just click on it where it says erase everything from the screen, and it will erase everything that you've put on the screen. All right, so why did I go through all of that with that for you? Oops, get over here. Get out. All right. Now my pen is stuck. Off. Pen. There we go. All right, so hypotonic. Here's my cell. We know that this is referring to the outside. So I have low concentration here, high concentration here. Show me how the fluid will move to dilute the concentration. Now remember, can we move the salt? If we're using salt as our example, the salt can't move. The salt is trapped. So if we are moving stuff this way, I'm not moving salt, all I'm moving is fluid. So do you see, if I'm moving this way, I'm actually making this more concentrated? I need to move the fluid this way because I can't move the salt. The salt is in the glass. Can't move the salt. I can only add to it to dilute it out.
Wait, so you're saying that the salt, the glass with the salt in it, is the one with the high concentration, right?
Yep, because it has salt in it and the other glass does not. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So here I'm looking at hyper, meaning excessive. Still talking about the outside. So this means that the outside has the higher concentration and the inside has the lower concentration. How is my fluid going to move now to dilute out the higher concentration? Now remember, we're not moving the molecule. We can only move the water. The salt is out here. Can't move the salt. The fluid is in here. I have to move the fluid this way to dilute the higher concentration.
Your sentence on the slideshow says the outside is more concentrated than the outside.
Oh gosh. And the outside is more, oh. Thank you for informing me of that. I didn't even notice. So hyper, the outside is more concentrated than the inside, because that doesn't make sense at all. If the outside is more concentrated than the outside, that can't happen. The outside is more concentrated than the inside. Now this is the concentrated with molecules, remember. We got molecules all out here. I can't move those. Those don't get moved. There's only one way for me to dilute it out, and that is to add fluid. So I'm always going to be moving the fluid in the direction of the higher concentration. We're not moving with a gradient on this. I know some of you are like, but Ms. Huff, you just said we're moving from high to low. No. That was for movement of molecules. This is for movement of fluid, and they have two opposite ways that they move. If I have diffusion, stupid pen just doesn't want to work today. If I have diffusion, high, low, then you're right. I'm moving from higher to lower, but that is the movement of molecules. I don't even know what I wrote here. Here, I am moving fluid. Now I have high and low. I need to get these equal. So now my fluid has to move in this direction. This is fluid. Is everybody okay with the concept differences between diffusion and osmosis?
Yes.
Some of you who are of age may, let me correct this again, may know about a fun trick that you can do with gummy bears. Gummy bears and adult beverages.
Gummy bears up.
Gummy bears and adult clear fluid, right? You take your gummy bear. Burpers. You take your poorly drawn gummy bear and you put it in a receptacle and you add the burper. So this is a great experiment where the inside of the cell, so this is actually where we're hypertonic. We have, actually no, let me do that over. We have a high concentration of vodka on the outside, but we're far more densely concentrated as far as molecules here inside the gummy bear. So our high concentration is actually here, and our low concentration of gummy bears is here. How does the vodka move? Yeah, into the gummy, because the vodka is trying to balance out the gumminess And then what happens to the gummy bear?
He gets drunk.
Well, he does get drunk, but he also gets
He blows
bigger.
up. He blows up.
He blows up. He plumps up. That is an exact same thing that's happening to our cells. If I have an IV fluid, here's my blood cell that promotes fluid to go into the cell will get bigger and inflate like a water balloon. But if I have an IV fluid that promotes movement out of the cell gets smaller because the fluid is leaving. And that's osmosis. Wow, time flies when we are having fun drawing all over my PowerPoint. So I love the idea that you guys can now interact with me on a whole other level. Here, I'm gonna pause this.